There are millions of podcasts being done all over the world that take on the personalities of their creator. Some bring in thousands of listeners each week. Some bring in large amounts of revenue, while others entertain millions and help sell products. If you're like many podcasters, you want to reach your maximum potential. But how? How do you make your podcast stand out from all the rest? Join Dr. Barrett Matthews as he talks to experts who are doing it on The Productive Podcaster. Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews, and I am so glad you joined me today. We have a fantastic show. Now, here's the thing. For those of you who are new to The Productive Podcaster, I want to tell you what the show is about. I, of course, am a podcaster. And what I have found is that people who are podcasting or people that want to get into podcasting are scared sometimes to get it really going because they think that they have to be a certain way. And this podcast is to show you that there are a myriad of ways that you can do your podcast. There's no cookie cutter way to do a podcast. So I bring people on to show you how they're doing their podcast, how they've been productive with it, and you can learn from them. So that's the whole purpose of The Productive Podcaster. Now, before we get going, I want to make sure that you guys are doing one thing. I want you to share this. Share this with the people that you know. Let them know about Productive Podcaster. Also, I want you to actually go in and review it. Tell us how much you enjoy The Productive Podcaster. Let us rate the show. Let us know what you like about The Productive Podcaster. So now we can get going with the show. So The Productive Podcaster starts out every show with a segment I like to call Pros and Cons.
Pros and Cons.
Now, what is pros and cons? Pros and cons is where I give a podcasting tip to help you be a professional podcaster. Now, today we're going to talk about the solo show or the monologue show, where people you don't have any guests. It's just you talking on the podcast. Now, the benefits of that is that you don't have to rely on anyone. You don't have to worry about whether people are on time, whether they got everything tight as far as the schedule. You don't have to worry about whether they're going to be able to help you monetize it. It's just you. The challenges with that is that it can be intimidating to a lot of people. Yeah, it can be intimidating. Sometimes people wonder, can I carry a show for all that period of time? Will people listen to just me? Is my tone right? So forth and so on. They worry about it a lot because they're thinking that they're talking to themselves. When you're actually talking to an audience, you just can't see them. So understand that when you're doing a solo podcast, there are pros and there are cons with it. You just have to realize where you fit in that realm. So that is our tip for today in pros and cons. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a break. And when we come back, I have a good friend of mine on the show, a special guest. Now, I know what you're thinking, Barry, you always say it's a special guest. I can't help it if all of my friends are special. So I want you to just stay tuned. We'll be right back right after this break. How are you going to learn everything you need to know about starting a podcast? Well, at the Create Your Podcast Weekend, we put it all in 2 days and help you get your podcast going by next week. That's right, by next week. All you have to do is come to the Create Your Podcast Weekend and let us show you how to get your podcast up and running. We will show you how to attract listeners. We will show you how to get people to pay you for your products and services. What products and services? The products and services we show you how to create, all at the Create Your Podcast Weekend. All you have to do is go to createyourpodcastweekend.com and get registered today. And we have special bonuses. Some of you will even get us to give you the equipment to start your podcast. That's right. We're going to give some of you the podcasting equipment to get started. Go to createyourpodcastweekend.com. That's createyourpodcastweekend.com and get started on your podcast by next week. It's time to be a boss, a media boss. If you're in business for yourself, it's time that you get your message out. And podcasting is the best way to do it. Let us create a done-for-you podcast experience with Media Boss Club. All you have to do is go to MediaBossClub.com and we'll create a done-for-you podcast right now. That's MediaBossClub.com. Everybody, welcome back to the Productive Podcaster. As I told you, I have a very special guest today, and I'm excited. I have known this woman for years. It seems like we've known each other a lifetime because I'm very, very close to her. And I'm talking about none other than Debby Montgomery Johnson. She is a good friend of mine. And here's the thing. If you have a challenge in your life and it's something that's keeping you from getting something out, Debbie's that person that shows you how to stand up and speak up and get it out so that you don't hold those things inside so long, because all that's doing is hurting you when you hold it inside. She does that on her podcast. She helps people to bring that out. She helps people to speak up. And man, has she got a story herself. I have loved this woman ever since I met her, and I'm just so glad to have her here on the Productive Podcaster with you. So guys, everybody, help me welcome Debby, I keep saying Debby Montgomery Johnson. Debbie, welcome to the Productive Podcaster.
Thank you so much, Barrett. It's so fun to be here. I'm really excited.
I'm excited too. You know, me and you, we are closer than close. I just love this woman. Ever since I met you, we were on a cruise. We met on a cruise ship, and it's not like that. Stop thinking that. But we met on a business cruise, and we were both speakers there. And I just remember that it was a women's cruise, and everybody kept saying about how brave I was to speak with all of these women. And I heard Debbie's story, and I said, no, she's brave. She's brave. So Debbie, please tell everyone real quick, if you can do it quick, about your story, because we want to get into your podcast too.
Well, the bottom line is the reason I was on that cruise, I had taken my mom on the cruise so
Love
that
your mom.
she loves you too. I had just published a book called The Woman Behind the Smile, Triumph Over the Ultimate Online Dating Betrayal, which the title obviously puts it right out there. I had lost my husband suddenly in 2010. And after 6 months, my friend said, need a life. Well, they meant I needed to get back into dating, which was very difficult for me at 52 to even think about dating again. And so I went online and I did it safely. Well, after 2 years, my safe online dating experience turned into a $1 million fraud, and I hid from it. So that cruise was the first time I'd really spoken publicly about what had happened. And I wanted to do it in front of my mother. And I loved your reaction to it because you were the only man there. And to get a man's reaction to the scam was extraordinary for me because there's a different feeling from a guy. It's like you weren't protected, or where was your family or something. And men get angry. They really get angry. So do women, but they get over it. But men get really angry that it happens because it's someone taking advantage of a woman. Mm-hmm. And even though we're pretty self-sufficient ladies, I did get taken, and it was one of those things. That's where it started. That's where I almost hid from it.
And first of all, I never knew that this is the first I'm hearing about your opinion on how I reacted to it. I didn't know that, so I'm glad to hear that. I didn't know that.
Well, and after the cruise, and when I went public with it, I actually got interviewed by a lot of men, and that was their reaction. They're very angry that there are men out there doing this. And we all know that it happens. We all know fraud happens, but I don't think we realize that it's so prevalent in online dating. Yeah. And in today's world, it's incredibly huge problem with working from home. It's not just online dating, it's gaming sites, it's podcasts, it's Zoom calls that get hijacked. It's LinkedIn, Facebook, every media platform is full of scammers.
You're right.
You don't hear about it, and you certainly don't hear from the victims, who I call survivors. And that's what my platform's all about, is working with the survivors, because there's a lot of cybersecurity information out there on how to keep yourself protected, how to clamp down on your privacy. But what happens when your mom or your grandma or your daughter gets scammed? And what happens when a man gets scammed? The FBI told me more men get scammed for $1 million than women, but they're angry. They don't tell anybody because now they're embarrassed about business. Yes. And it could have been a man behind the woman's picture. So there was a whole lot, a whole lot to it.
And if you remember, because I told you, I said, gosh, if that would happen to me, it would have gone to the grave with me. Because that's how men carry that, because we just feel that we should not let that happen to us. So I'm just, like I said, I applaud you, because I remember you said to me, had I kept that a secret, more people would not be helped. And
well, what's extraordinary to me is that what took 2 years for me, the scammers are now doing in 4 or 5 months. They've upped their game. They are so fast at what they do. They're trained in universities in Nigeria. They're huge in Ghana.
Are you serious?
They're big in India. Oh, it's a billions of dollars in underground economy. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I did not know that.
Happens every day.
I didn't know that they actually were training them. Oh my goodness, that's wow. That's mind blowing right there.
The IRS scam was actually in India, and they shut down a whole call center.
Wow.
But the guy that started it got away.
Of course. That's always the case. It's like a villain in a movie. They always get away. But
it's very difficult to catch them. Very difficult.
So let's talk about your podcast. Now, how did that start?
The podcast, it's going to be a year in 2 weeks.
Whoa,
so
hey.
You're coming at about my year point. It came because I wanted a platform that I could speak up, stand up, but that I could bring in guests, friends of mine, business associates. Everybody has a story. Everybody has had something happen to them. Not necessarily romance scam, because most of my guests are not romance scam victims, but domestic violence. It's been business failures or whatever. So everybody has something that they've been afraid to tell. Mm-hmm. And in the conversation, we have a conversation. It's very low key. I do my research on who they are. I'll listen to other podcasts or things that they put out there. And then I'll pick up on something that I know that my audience, who was typically victims of romance scam, what they need to hear. They need to hear financial foibles. They need to hear love issues. They need to hear these things. And how did my guest respond and move forward? How did they get back up from the bottom? And that's the fun part, because we give hope to people that are sometimes in very desperate situations. And I love it because it's an audio podcast. Actually, this is interesting as far as podcasters go.
Okay.
I wanted to start a video because I know people like visuals. Mm-hmm. The first guest I was going to do it with is a retired Army colonel. His name is Brian Denny. His picture's been used by scammers for thousands of profiles. And Brian is basically breaking up with a woman every day. And he hates it. It's ruined his life. It's the other side of scam. It's the identity theft side of romance scam. But when I brought Brian in as a guest and said, hey, I'd like to do a Zoom video today, he goes, I won't do it. I won't do the recording like that because scammers can take what I say and manipulate it.
Oh, wow.
And something will come out that I didn't say. I hadn't thought about that.
I had neither. No. Wow.
So I only do audio, but what I do after the fact, because I want to get it out on YouTube, is I ask them for still pictures. And I'll take the pictures and then I'll make graphics. And my hour-long podcast now has video that I've put together, and then I can put it out as an MP4.
There you go.
And it's cool. And I did that because of my mom and dad. You know my mother.
Yes, I love your mother.
They're 86 and 90.
Your mom still dancing?
Yeah, in Jamaica. Mom and dad are 86 and 91. And when they sit down to listen to the show, I knew that it would be more engaging for them to have something to look at. And that's why I put this podcast with video I make a video out of it together. Right. And I put it out on Anchor and Apple and all those as an MP3. But I can put it out as a video on YouTube, and it's really quite engaging. And that's fun because then I get to listen to it again and hear what they really said. And our goal now is to try to get out to a bigger audience, which everybody that's in the business wants to do. But I do it for myself because I learn a lot. I learned so much about
I've learned a lot already just from this.
It's great. And, after an hour with a guest like that, you become friends. And we might use them to help our victims out at SCARS, which is the Society of Citizens Against Relationship Scams. It's the nonprofit I'm on the board of. We put our videos out to them because they're not going to come on. They're not going to come on live, but they'll listen and they'll learn. And I've met some extraordinary people that way and have gotten very bold. I reach out to people now. Because I used to use my women's group. I would bring them in. But now I go to people that I don't know, that I might have heard of, that are in the cybersecurity business, in the banking business, in fraud. One of my favorite guests, his name is Brett Johnson, not not related to me. He was called the Godfather, the Internet Godfather, or Godfather of the Internet by Secret Service and the FBI. One of the original scammers in the early 90s in the black underground, internet. Well, he got caught. He got thrown in jail. He escaped. He went back to prison. And now he is not a contractor, but a consultant for the FBI, cybersecurity.
Really?
And so I brought him on because I wanted to know how the scammers do it.
Yeah.
He wasn't a romance scam guy, but he was one of the original sold a Beanie Baby, wrong. You got to hear his story. He's a great guy. But I learned so much from him about how scammers do it, and it's extraordinary.
It's a special type of person, I swear.
They're so smart. They are so far ahead of us. And if they're the consummate sales guy.
Yeah.
If we could put them to use for good.
Exactly.
It'd be amazing.
Exactly.
We do have a man in Ghana that's trying to reform scammers. And here's a fun thing. I'm being interviewed by National Geographic tomorrow.
Wow.
They're doing a show. They have a series called Trafficking. They're coming here. They've talked to a few other women that I've been in touch with about our story, but they're actually flying to Ghana. And they're going to get the story from the police, if the police will talk to them. And they're going to talk to our contact over there about how this happens.
We have got to talk. I'm going to be doing some work in Ghana.
Really?
Yeah.
Scary place for some people.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about that offline. Yeah, we'll definitely have to talk about that.
But that's why I do my show, because I want to raise awareness of online scam, but in a way that everybody knows that it could happen to your mother, to your daughter, to your sister, to your best friend, regardless of race, religion, age, you name it.
My father got the Publishers Clearinghouse scam sent to him. And I looked at it and I went online and I said, Dad, this is on Publishers Clearinghouse website. It says they never ask anyone for any money because they wanted say $900 or something for taxes, they say. And he was so excited. He really wanted it to be real, but it just wasn't.
My dad has gotten phone calls from Amazon the last week. 5 calls. I said, Dad, Amazon does not call you. I'm one of their sellers. I can't get them to talk to me for beans. But we went onto his Amazon account. I said, you don't have any charges here. Don't answer phone calls that you don't know who they're from, which is most of the calls now. And actually, I just read something I had to get at the AARP magazine. Today, they said it's all on text now. How many texts are you getting that are soliciting things? They're all scammers.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a good way to do it.
Happens all the time. So as far as so you're going out and reaching to get your guests now. That's cool. Where do you find them?
Oh, I just look. I get connections on LinkedIn. They're responding to something that I said. Also, here's an interesting thing. I went on to Matchmaker FM, matchmaker.fm.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of that.
Yeah. You know it? Matchmaker.fm.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually put myself out there to be a guest.
Right.
On the podcast. And it is amazing. I put out maybe 6 inquiries in a week and I got 3 or 4 back. And I've been on 3 already this week.
Wow.
It's amazing. But you can go in as a podcaster looking for guests, or you can go as a guest looking for podcasts.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. So I do that. And then I get people in my women's group, I'll put it out there that I'm looking for guests, and people come to me and say, hey, I'd love to be on your show.
Now, I hope everyone's listening to a couple of things that Debbie's saying about how she's getting her guests. That's one thing. And another thing that I really caught was when she basically turned her video podcast into what we call a visual podcast. So she's not using video per se, but she makes it visual so that it's more appealing to those people that want to see something and still listen to the podcast. So she's doing that herself. I mean, if you want to do, I'm sure if you all listen to the commercials we air here on the Productive Podcast, you see we have a done for you program you can take advantage of as well if you don't want to do the work yourself. But Debbie's one of those people that she's going to get out there and do it. That's what I love about it. But it's amazing. Debbie, right. As much as I hate to say it, our time is about up. Man, it went so fast. I'm telling you, I love this woman. She knows it. She knows I love her. I love her mother. We're just so cool. I could talk with her for days. So Debbie, please tell everyone where they can find your podcast, the name of it, and where they can find it.
Well, you're on it on Thursday. So it's Stand Up and Speak Up. You can go to thewomanbehindthesmile.com to register to get the information about it. It's a dial-in telephone podcast, or you can look at the replays on my YouTube channel, which is under Debby, but I think it's Debby Butz Montgomery Johnson. A lot of last names. But.
Well, guys, guess what? Debbie's not going anywhere just yet. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to have our pod question. We're going to take a question from our audience member. Debbie's going to help me answer that question as well. So stay right there. We'll be right back with more of the Productive Podcaster. It's time to be a boss, a media boss. If you're in business for yourself, it's time that you get your message out. And podcasting is the best way to do it. Let us create a done-for-you podcast experience with Media Boss Club. All you have to do is go to MediaBossClub.com and we'll create a done-for-you podcast right now. That's MediaBossClub.com. Starting a podcast can be a daunting task. There's a lot that goes into it, and you're probably wondering if you're able to handle it. Well, why don't you just take 2 days and let us teach you how to do it at the Create Your Podcast Weekend. That's right. We're going to show you all the aspects of how to start your podcast, how to keep your podcast going, how to attract listeners, and how to make money with your podcast. CreateYourPodcastWeekend.com. Get registered right now. Let's face it, you've been talking about starting a podcast for quite some time, but you haven't started yet. Why is that? Could it be that you just don't have the time because your day-to-day keeps you so busy? Or could it be that you don't want to learn all the technical aspects that go into putting together a quality podcast? Well, at Media Boss Club, we take care of that for you. How would you like to have a done-for-you experience? That's right. At Media Boss Club, we build your podcast for you. We will edit your podcast. We will put in the music for you. We even put in commercial breaks that you can put your advertisers in. We will take care of all of the uploading to the great podcast platforms that are out there. That's right, we do everything. All you have to do is just right now go to MediaBossClub.com. That's MediaBossClub.com and let us handle the heavy lifting for you. All right, guys, we are back with the Productive Podcaster. As I told you, my guest, Debbie, I keep saying it, Debby Montgomery Johnson. She was great. Told you she was going to be great. Debby Montgomery Johnson. I got to say it slow. That's how I got to do it. So I've never had this problem before. Well, I've never had to say your full name like that. I usually just say Debbie. So, but she was great, as I told you. And guess what? As I also promised, she has not gone anywhere. She's right here because she's here to help us with our segment called PodQuest.
PodQuest.
And yes, PodQuest is where we take an audience question and we answer. Now, first of all, those of you who have wondered, well, how do I get my question on PodQuest? Well, first of all you have to do is go to our private Facebook page. What's it called? The Productive Podcaster. All you have to do is just do that. Go to our private Facebook page and post in there and engage. Join the group and engage with us. We'd love to have you just engage with us, talk to us, ask us questions, and we'll be glad to help, and maybe your question will be answered on the podcast as well. But the question today we get from an audience member, someone who's in the group, is who should I learn podcasting from? Who should I learn podcasting from? So Debbie, I'm going to let you take that question first.
For me, it's really interesting. I don't have anybody in specific, but I listen to audiobooks a lot. I listen to podcasts on audio, and I learn how they do their introduction. I learn how they do the closing. I learn how they ask questions. What are the best kinds of questions? And then I have a women's group called Women's Prosperity Network. They do a weekly show, and I listen to those. It's a free show. I listen to those. I listen to you. I listen to Donald Kelly, one of the fellows that works for me. Just all sorts of different people. Mel Robbins. I listened to Mel Robbins one this morning. I like the energy. I like to get tips on how best to do podcasts and how to bring the energy to them. So variety for me.
And I agree with you. My answer is kind of similar to that. I mean, there are always people out there that can help you with podcasting. One of the guys I think is great is Steve Olsher. Steve has a group, Masters of Reinvention, where he helps people. He does a whole lot of training and coaching with podcasts. Stephen Welsner is another gentleman. He wrote a book on podcasting, and he's actually works with Interactive ROI. He helps a lot with podcasting as well. And I say listen to some of your favorite podcasts and just pick up take notes. You don't have to hire somebody, just take notes on what people are doing. But here's the thing I want you to understand. This is why we do this particular show, is that there is no cookie cutter way. People are doing different things. It's your show. And I think everyone has this, but everybody doesn't tap into it. It's the fact that you have creative juices running through you. Be creative. Think of your own way. Here's the great thing also about it being your own show. If you don't like it, you can change it. You can change it. God knows I've done things differently from first episode to this episode. So it's just, we can change it. But the thing is to start doing it. Don't keep hesitating until I have to learn this from a certain person. Just do it. Just do it. You'll be amazed at the fact that people will still like what you do. It may not be the number you want, but you'll get to that number. Just be patient and understand it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So just keep doing it and do it out of love. And that's the best advice I can give. So Debbie, before I let you go for good, I want to have you please tell everyone again the name of your podcast and where they can find it.
The name of the podcast is Stand Up and Speak Up. You can find it at thewomanbehindthesmile.com. That's the registration to get in for the live show. It's also on YouTube. It's on Anchor. It's on Apple. It's just called Stand Up and Speak Up with Debby Montgomery Johnson.
All right. Fantastic. So Debbie, once again, thank you again. You're always welcome, and I'll be seeing you soon on your podcast as well. So thank you so much for joining us here on the Productive Podcast. But guys, it's time right now. First of all, I want you guys to go to her podcast and subscribe. Do that. So go to her podcast, subscribe, and make sure you follow her because she does some great things. And as you can see, she helps a whole lot of people. So now it's time now for our podcast profile. This is where I find a podcast that I've listened to and that I kind of like, and I think you may like it as well. There's a TV show that was on, I believe, on Netflix called Bridgerton. And a lot of people were caught up in Bridgerton. It's a period type of podcast, and it's a series, a romantic series, has a lot of drama and everything in it. And they have a podcast. So if you get a chance, check out the Bridgerton podcast. You may like it. It seems like a lot of fun. I listened to a little bit of it. It seems like a lot of fun. So that is the podcast profile. And I think you guys may like it. So check out the Bridgerton podcast. It's on Shondaland. So I think by Shonda Rhimes, she put it together. And I think you guys may like that. Now, it's also time for our podcast giveaway this week. This week, we're going to give away an audio copy of my book, Why Didn't You Get It Done? So you get an audio copy of my book, Why Didn't You Get It Done? And that one is going to Mr. Joseph Barber. Joseph Barber, thank you for following the show. That's right. You're saying, how can you get one? It's real simple. All you have to do is be someone that goes into our Facebook group, which is The Productive Podcaster. Make sure you join the group. And that way we can actually highlight you and you may win a prize as well. So guys, it is some time to one of my favorite parts of the show. And that is where I give a productivity quote to help you to be more productive in what you do in your life and in your business. And the productivity quote today, it comes from Sunday Adelaja. And the quote is, your daily product determines your value. Your daily product determines your value. What are you doing each day to increase your value? What product are you putting out to increase your value? So guys, that is the Productive Podcast for today. I want to thank Debby Montgomery Johnson. You see how I said it slow this time, for joining me today. She's a very special guest, and I want you guys to follow her podcast. Also, make sure you are sharing the Productive Podcast with other people. Make sure you are subscribing. Make sure you are downloading the episodes and listening and letting everybody know what you learned from the Productive Podcaster. We look forward to seeing you all again next time. So as I say before I leave every episode, don't just settle for being awesome. Set your goal to all them all. And take action, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us on the Productive Podcaster. Be sure to join us next time for another great show. We welcome your engagement, so make sure you participate by joining the Productive Podcaster Facebook group and chime in. Also, share the Productive Podcaster with some of your friends right now. If you have a podcast and you're looking for guests, or if you would like to be a guest on a podcast, join our podcast exchange at www.podcastworlddirectory.com. We'll see you next time.